Hey guys, welcome back to the second part of the Super Star Wars trilogy. Up next is Super Empire Strikes Back, which I hear is also a pretty good movie. But before we get into that, I was actually a bit surprised by how many people in the comments of the previous video said just how hard that they thought Super Star Wars was. While I always thought that it was challenging and the platforming does suck ass, I got to the point where I could play through it without much of a problem. But that changed significantly with the game that we're about to talk about today. So let's just get into that. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't watched that first video, do yourself a favor and check it out since it covers a lot of stuff that all three of these games share. But if you're all set, then let's see if Super Empire Strikes Back was a worthy follow-up to Super Star Wars. Super Empire Strikes Back for the Super Nintendo tries to be everything a sequel should be, but ends up being a frustrating step back in a lot of ways. As a kid, Empire was always my favorite movie, and it still is to this day. I loved the battle on Hoth, with the rebels desperately fighting an unwinnable battle with the Empire. Luke training with Yoda only to see that he wasn't ready to be the Jedi Master that he wanted to be. And then finally facing off with Vader on Bespin, only to lose and come out of it barely alive in the end. Yes, it was a darker tone, but that was one of my favorite things about it. Plus, it was just a huge jump in quality in just about every single way from the original movie. So I was hoping that Super Empire Strikes Back would be just as big of a jump over Super Star Wars as the movie was.
Big, new, sprawling space adventure in the Star Wars saga.
And just going from the back of the box, it really looked like this one was going to be the sequel that us kids were wanting, especially after seeing those screenshots of a full-on battle for Hoth level and Luke and Vader having their showdown on Bespin. Just those two things alone got me to buy the game. So let's see if it was worth the wait and my hard-earned money. Super Empire Strikes Back continues Super Star Wars' impressive storytelling with a ton of really great cutscenes in this game as well. And they all look even better here with some great animation to really make you feel like you're watching scenes from the movie. Some of them even getting close to CD-ROM cutscenes that you'd see on PC at the time. Empire also really ups the game here with just about every scene in the movie accounted for, and even some that the movie barely got to show. The graphics also get a big upgrade in Super Empire Strikes Back, maybe too big of an upgrade. This is a fantastic looking game where you can tell the developers spent a lot of time getting just about every single detail as close as they could. Like, look how good Luke's Tauntaun looks. That's just a good looking Tauntaun. Along with just about everything else in the game too. Every character, stormtrooper, weird alien, and level has had a considerable glow up in Empire. And while it may not be the most colorful game out there, since a majority of it does take place in the snow and a swamp, it's still about as good as you can get on the Super Nintendo. Gameplay though is largely the same in Empire, so we're just going to go over the new stuff and the bad stuff. You finally get the ability to actually run and gun in this game, along with a proper double jump that really should have been in the first game. And it goes a long way in making those awful platforming sections from the first game a little less awful. The big new change that the game throws in are force powers that Luke gets after training with Yoda. After that, you'll find a variety of force power-ups that you can access whenever you press the select button. With some really neat stuff like being able to freeze enemies, deflect shots back at them, slow time to a crawl, and even use levitate to completely bypass large chunks of the stage if you want to. These are all legit the coolest things in the game, and they're a ton of fun to use and experiment with. Unfortunately though, you don't get them until halfway through the game, and by then you only get a couple of levels where you actually get to play as Luke on Bespin, since you're playing as Han and Chewie most of the time there. So as much fun as they are to use, it just kind of seems like you don't get much time at all to play with them. Oh, and speaking of playing as Han and Chewie this time, while you don't get to select who you want to play as anymore, both characters at least get some unique special moves that they can use this time around. Han has his grenades that he can toss at enemies and are especially handy with bosses, and Chewie gets his patented spin attack, which is really nice since it anchors him to the ground whenever he does it, making some of the most annoying enemies super easy to deal with. Unfortunately, neither are as cool as using Luke's force powers, but it's at least more than they could do in the first game. The vehicle levels also get a big upgrade in Empire as well, since you actually get full 360-degree movement in this one, unlike just being able to move forward in Super Star Wars. And that makes a big difference in the snowspeeder battle, since you now have to fly past ATSTs and AT-ATs and then circle back around to take them down. Even being able to launch your tow cable onto an AT-AT and then circle around them to trip them up just like the movie. This level alone was enough to sell a lot of kids on this game, since it really is that impressive. But of course, you also get Han flying the Falcon through an asteroid belt to shake Empire troops, which really feels like LucasArts was flirting with an actual flight sim here, complete with radar to track enemies. And then finally fighting your way above and below the clouds in an X-Wing on your way to Bespin, which was definitely not in the movie, but I'm not complaining since these levels are just so much fun. Really, that's where the good news ends though, because unfortunately Empire really doubled down on some of Super Star Wars' worst ideas for the rest of the game. You remember how I mentioned that you were getting pushed around a lot in that first game? Well, get ready to barely feel like you're in control in this game a lot of the time. Stuff is just constantly knocking and sliding you all over the place in this game, especially since the game looks to have tripled the amount of enemies on screen this time. This results in controller throwing levels of madness, when you're just trying your best to make a jump and the game is slapping you down over and over again. This isn't just difficult, it's demoralizing. At worst, you feel more like you're a pinball in this game than a Jedi Master. And the thing that really hurts this game the most is that it seems like all those shiny new graphics push the Super Nintendo a little bit too hard here, since just about every single stage seems to be running in slow motion half the time. While there was some slowdown in the first game, it's really noticeable here. Combine that slowdown with your character constantly getting punted around the screen, and you've got a game that just doesn't feel great for a majority of the time that you're playing it. It's really saying something when you finally get to use Luke's slow motion power and it just kind of feels like things are moving as slow as they usually do. This is also probably a good time to mention the difficulty here, because Empire really ramps it up. The first game wasn't exactly easy, but you could make your way through without too much of an issue. Empire is on a whole different level though. Obviously, all the stuff that I just mentioned already makes the difficulty high enough, but the levels are just brutal with annoying platforming and plenty of bottomless pits and one-hit kills. And those levels are just as long and repetitive here as they were in Super Star Wars, but they feel even longer since the game has multiple levels that are essentially the exact same back to back. It really starts to wear on you, especially when you just got done fighting for your life to make it through one of these levels just to see the exact same level come up again. Thankfully, the game does have some really cool stages though, like climbing your way to the top of an AT-AT and then fighting the head. And later on having Chewie make his way through the Ugnaught factory on Bespin to save 3PO. But sadly, a lot of what's in between those levels feels more like padding this time around. Honestly, coming back to Super Empire Strikes Back is really mixed for me. As much as I loved this one as a kid, playing it these days, I gotta admit it was pretty rough. I still love how close the game tries to follow the movie, and the vehicle levels are still really good, but the rest of the game is just kind of frustrating to make it through. The Force powers are a fun addition to the game, really letting you decide how you want to approach the couple of levels that you can use them in, but the overall gameplay feels too slippery and slidey in this one, especially with the much higher difficulty. I still like this one a lot though, and I think it does just about everything a sequel should, but Super Empire Strikes Back maybe needed some work done under the hood before giving it a really nice coat of paint. Hopefully, the final game in the trilogy can use the Force to bring everything together into one really great game.
Most impressive.
And I think that's going to do it for Super Empire Strikes Back. This was actually the game that I was most excited about playing through again, but I was not prepared for the wall that I was about to hit. Even on easy, this game is just brutal, to the point where I had to rely on passwords just to get a lot of the footage for this game, which is something I try not to do with these videos. I actually came out of this one kind of feeling down about the whole thing, to the point where I almost just tossed this whole project to the side. But we're going to go ahead and see this one through to the end, with the next video covering Super Return of the Jedi, the game in the series that I have the least amount of experience with, so let's see if it surprises me at all. But as for this video, I gotta thank everyone that's watched it this far, plus all of you letting me know what you think of the series in the comments. I love hearing everyone's experiences with these games, and it's a ton of fun to commiserate together, especially with this game. But that's gonna do it from me this time. Be sure to check back for the next video when we can finally finish this trilogy off with hopefully a good final game. Until then though, thanks for watching, guys.